Hello, folks. DM Travel Typhoon here, and finally, you have waited for it. You wanted it, and some guy calling me saying, "Hey, yes, you still haven't reacted to this." So sorry this took so long. I just been very, very, very busy on getting my cafe ready for the grand opening on July 1st. I finally now have some free time to react to this. So thank you for all of you for your patience. And, well, frankly, thank you for watching me, regardless. Anyways, so, last we left off, we saw the Battle of the Eastern Solomons from the American perspective. You saw me eat my own words. And you saw me do it in 2 damn parts. Now, depending on how much I ramble on, because 1, I'm autistic, and 2, I'm a literal armchair historian. So I tend to ramble. So, depending on that, this could be a 2-parter as well. Who knows? Got some water here because it's freaking hot out. 32 degrees Celsius right now. It's hot. With no rain the past several weeks. And no air conditioning at all. So it's very, very hot in this room right now. So, are you ready, Pinkie Pie? Yes? Alright. So that's it. You ready? No, you're leaving the job. Okay. I think I wasted everybody's time. Let us begin, shall we? And 3, 2, 1, play.
This is part 2 of a 2-part series on the Battle of the Eastern Solomons. If you haven't watched the first one, I suggest you do so to avoid any confusion that may occur. We will go over the battle again, with no fog of war this time, and from a Japanese perspective. This will help the viewer get a clear picture of what truly transpired during that chaotic and confusing battle.
Yeah, it was chaotic and confusing as we saw my last reactions. Ooh, wrong hole. Anyways, continue.
The Japanese were initially caught by surprise when the Allies landed on Guadalcanal on August 7th. Despite this, their quick and bold response got them a tremendous victory at Savo Island and nearly derailed the American campaign. After seeing that the American transports had withdrawn and that the Marines on shore had seemingly been abandoned, the Japanese response quickly became lackluster. Japanese intelligence estimated some 2,000 dispirited troops were left on the island, clearly not a threat. Maybe this had all just been a raid.
Hindsight's 2020. Definitely not a raid, but I mean, I'm gonna say this right now. Speaking as a Hearts of Iron 4 player, but even if it's one Marine temperature on an island, I will send troops to destroy that damn thing. That Marine to battalion, because it costs the AI or enemy player a valuable piece of resource, some troops, some manpower that they'll never get back. So, even though, yes, there was only 2,000 troops there, by their estimates, they should have gone guns, holes blazing, and wiped out the Marines from the get-go. But, by the sounds of it, lackluster, they thought it was a raid. I mean, I will give them this. The Americans were pretty passive in terms of offenses. After all, this was the first offensive campaign they ever done, so okay, I can give the Japanese some credit. Anyways, moving on.
Admiral Yamamoto was not so optimistic and was gravely concerned at what he saw.
This guy, I mean, what to say about him? It hasn't already been said before. This guy went to America for schooling. I think Harvard, if I remember correctly. He knows the Americans. he basically he knew what was going to happen. Anyways.
It may have been a raid, but if the Americans established themselves and made the airfield on Guadalcanal operational, it would pose a strategic threat to their hold on the Solomon Islands. Whatever Marines were left on the island had to be pushed out immediately. Therefore, he decided on a grand offensive. Reinforcements would be sent to the island to recapture the airfield with the full backing of his combined fleet. The code name was Operation KA. This was Japan's first full-scale effort to retake Guadalcanal. For this operation, Yamamoto counted on a powerful order of battle. He had two major task forces he planned on sending: Admiral Kondo's powerful Second Fleet and the Third Fleet under Vice Admiral Nagumo, also known as the Kido Butai. The newly reconstituted Kido Butai centered on the carriers Shokaku and Zuikaku, along with the light carrier Zuiho. Zuiho wasn't available, so Rujo took her place. Despite the disaster at Midway, Admiral Nagumo still retained his position as commander of the Mobile Striking Force. Thus, Eastern Solomons would be a rematch between him and Vice Admiral Fletcher. The three carriers were at full strength and were coming into the battle.
If I remember correctly, Nagumo was the guy who led the Japanese forces in Midway. Yeah, this will be a rematch.
With 177 aircraft. A key lesson taken from Midway was the need for an advance warning of an airstrike.
No shit, dumbass!
This advanced force role would be given to Kondo's Second Fleet and would operate 100 to 150 miles in front of Nagumo's carriers. This served three purposes. They could give early warnings of an incoming airstrike to Nagumo, or could serve as a magnet and absorb airstrikes intended for the main carriers.
I will give them that. That's actually a good idea.
Lastly, it was hoped they could finish off any American ships that had been crippled by Nagumo's airstrikes. And as a final measure for early warnings, radar had finally been installed on the Shokaku.
Wait. You're telling me that the Japanese carriers didn't have radar? They didn't have radar. Okay. Oh boy. I think radar would have been, I don't know, Braybog standard for any aircraft carrier. Specifically at that time for any nation that had an aircraft carrier. Because you still need to know where your planes are at, and it's not like in case they get lost. So you can drag them in and also track out enemy aircraft, like you just said. The Japanese didn't have radar? Please put in the comments if they tell me if I'm wrong. That they had some form of radar, because if they just put radar on this thing now at 1942, just remind people, World War II has been going on since 1939. Britain has demonstrated the potential of radar by this point for the Battle of Britain. Even the American carriers have some form of radar. Of radar. You're telling me the Japanese didn't have any till now? Oh. Yeah, let me know in the comments if they did have radar or some form of it at least. Because I refuse to believe that the Japanese didn't have any form of radar on their carriers. Because I refuse that. I refuse that they had some guy on a lookout post with a binocular looking for planes to direct their fire patrol teams. It's stupid. Okay, moving on. Rant over.
However, The operators were still getting acquainted with this new system, and their inexperience would soon show. Yamamoto gave Nagumo and Kondo their orders. They needed to exploit the recent victory of Sabo Island with a major push to dislodge the American force off the island. A convoy of 3 transports carrying 1,500 troops under Rear Admiral Tanaka.
Hindsight 2020, they needed at least 8,000 men. Actually, no. I think the Japanese should have learned from Wake Island. We should watch a video from the second election from the fat electrician when he says, well, I think he said, was it 450 or 750? Anyways, it was 100 something 50. Insert number of 50 here. Marines and civilians that held Wake Island for weeks against a full Japanese invasion force. They didn't give up the island without a fight. I think they should have learned that by now. Because they're not going up against an army. No. They're going after fucking motherfucking Marines. These guys, they take no prisoners. They take no bullshit. They take no crap. They will kill you. With a pencil. With a freaking pencil. These are the guys, these were John Wick's predecessors. In a way. And they didn't work for the high table. Mr. Wick. Anyways, back to... I have yet to see movie number 4. I can't wait till I can see it on the stream service because I can't afford to go to the movie theater right now. Yeah. Anyways, moving on.
Was to depart for Guadalcanal. Kirobutai and Kondo's advance force would play the primary role of protecting him. Their main objective was to support the convoy, but if it seems a little funny that a whole fleet is coming out in force to escort such a small landing force, it's because it is. You see, the reality was that Admiral Yamamoto saw this more as an opportunity to avenge Midway than to provide support for a convoy.
Yeah, and I will say this: the Japanese obsession was thinking that this divisive battle, relive the glories of the Battle of Toshima over the Second Pacific Squadron from Russia. I think that ultimately doomed them against the Americans. They doomed him in Midway, and will doom him here. Because sadly, it doesn't matter if you get this decisive battle. I'm going to play while I talk. Decisive battle.
A decisive clash would come from this operation, where he could finally sink those darn American carriers.
Even if he managed to sink the American carriers, all right, let's say this: if he managed to sink those carriers, he manages to go all the way, and managed to capture Hawaii. America's gonna go, fuck you. Here's our response. Here's our freaking armed, angry civilians building ships after ship after ship, ready to blast you a new one. Ready to put warheads on foreheads. We will retake our islands. It'll be the battle of the century. And I think, as most historians says, even if they manage to get to Hawaii, they will only delay the inevitable. Because, again, Pearl Harbor, they attacked without a declaration of war. Yes, there was some problems with the code book and decoding, weather problems for the radio man that delayed that declaration of war. If it was all timed to perfection, which it was, and if it all went out without a hitch, then yeah, Japan would have declared war, and that surprise attack wouldn't have been, well, illegal internationally. But we all know what happened. So anyways, rambling. Hi, travel. Move on, please. Sorry, Santa. Uh-oh. Did I? What just happened?
Therefore,
thank you.
The real objectives were the following.
Yeah.
First and foremost, wipe out any American naval forces supporting Guadalcanal. And secondly, provide air support for the convoy. but as you can see, it's not really a priority from their perspective. Given their orders, both commanders soon made arrangements to depart. Kondo left on the 11th and Nagumo on the 16th. Now, it can be recalled that as late as the 21st, Allied intelligence continued to place Nagumo in home waters. This leads to an all-important question. Why was American intelligence so wrong?
Yeah, that's a good question, because case in point, my last reactions, which was several months ago, why?
Well, that's something that I feel is often overlooked during this battle, and it is the noteworthy efforts of the Japanese to increase their communication security, which ended up paying a handsome reward. The Japanese had already begun implementing security measures to strengthen their radio communications prior to Operation Watchtower. There's no evidence to suggest that these changes were a result of Midway. As a matter of fact, the Japanese still believed their codes to be unbreakable. Instead, it seems that these changes were just a result of being prudent. They've been at war for 9 months now, and they figured, hey, we should tighten up our communication security regularly.
Yeah, that makes sense. And let's be honest, that's much better than what the Germans did with their Enigma machines. After all, let's face it, there was Enigma machines. As soon as the Allies cracked it, the first one, it took Germans a good year before they realized it. Then they added another wheel. And took the Allies, I guess, several months before they cracked that one. So yeah, listen, learn, people. Change your codes every 3 months. To keep your enemy off guard. Or at the very least, every 6 months. Anyways, moving on.
On May 28th, they changed their main fleet code from JN-25B to JN-25C. It didn't stop the disaster of Midway from happening, but it did put the codebreakers in the dark for now. Just when the codebreakers were getting some breakthroughs, they changed their codes again to JN-25D on August 15th. On top of this, they attempted other measures. They changed their radio call signs and used special unbroken codes to report on Allied activities in the Solomons.
Oof.
They had their major units go on radio silence, and as was speculated, they did try their hand at radio deception, having other units send messages as if they were carriers.
I think the military has a word for this. I think it was what's it called? ComSec? Communication security. You do not want your enemy to know what you're doing. So the Admiralty, the Admiralty in this case, tells their sailors, their commanders, basically everybody underneath them to shut up about your current operation, and they use other operations to, fool the Americans in this case.
The combination of all these efforts cannot be minimized, for as we saw, from August 15th, the code breakers were in the dark at a crucial time to give an advance warning to Fletcher. Although they weren't impeded completely, radio analysis was able to at least conclude rather accurately the composition of the Japanese forces. But as we saw, intelligence was always a step behind when it came regarding to their movements and intentions. But there was one more ace up the sleeve the Americans had, which could have possibly offset all of this. One of the codes that remained broken and continued to be read on a regular basis were the ones used by the port director at Truk. He conveniently registered every ship that entered and left the port.
Forgive me if I'm wrong, but isn't Truk basically Japan's version of Pearl Harbor? You would think by now, those guys will have ComSec. Okay, let's hear what's happening.
It was believed the carriers, after such a long journey from Japan, would port in Truk for replenishment and refueling before heading to battle. Privy to all this, They could then give a more accurate warning to Fletcher. Interestingly enough, the plan should have worked because it was exactly what Nagumo had planned on doing. However, as Nagumo was heading south, he decided to cancel his scheduled stop at Truk and instead refuel at sea.
Nagumo did it right.
That's why, on August 23rd, with no information of Nagumo's arrival in Truk, they assumed the carriers to still be north of Truk, when in reality, they were only 300 miles north of Fletcher. So, did all these efforts of changing their naval codes, call signs, and attempts at radio deception work? Well, I would say to some degree, yes.
Yeah.
It wasn't perfect,
Definitely.
but the uncertainty it created led to radio analysts giving Fletcher flawed intelligence that deluded him into thinking it was safe to refuel the Wasp right before the battle. Thus, when Fletcher was confronted by Nagumo on the 24th, we can say that, thanks to all these efforts, the Japanese had at least achieved tactical surprise.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I would give them that.
A noteworthy achievement. As Kondo and Nagumo were making their way south, the Japanese forces at Truk and Rabaul had not been completely idle. They had been conducting small raids on Henderson Field and discreetly landing small groups of infantry on the island. On August 18th, 917 men of the elite Ichiki detachment were landed on the island undetected by the Allies. The hot-headed commander, rather than waiting for reinforcements,
Oh, I think I know what's happening. I think this is the night raid battle that I think this regiment's gonna be killed completely.
decided to attack. Of course, he was not met by 2,000 dispirited troops, but by 11,000 well-dug-in Marines. His force was obliterated at the Battle of the Tenaru River.
Yep.
The news of this defeat sent shockwaves up the chain of command. The following day, a submarine spotted and warned the Imperial Navy that 2 transports were heading to Guadalcanal. All that was available was a destroyer, and it would prove to be enough. Although the Kawakaze was not able to get to the transports, she did attack a pair of escorts and sunk the destroyer Blue. The recent convoys encountered and the defeat of Ichiki's detachment dispelled the notion that this had all just been a raid and showed that the Americans were committed on staying.
Yeah. That's a good idea to call.
The next discovery showed them that they would be committed to battle. On August 20th, American carriers were discovered off Guadalcanal, which couldn't have made Yamamoto happier. He would have his decisive battle after all. But the second revelation wasn't so good. American aircraft had landed on Guadalcanal's airfield. As Yamamoto had feared, the Americans now had an operating airbase, essentially an unsinkable carrier.
Yep, and they soon be called the Cactus Air Force. Moving on.
The next 2 days in the lead up towards battle, the Japanese would lose 2 search planes that ran across Fletcher's carriers. The presence of carriers and an operating enemy airfield understandably worried Tanaka and posed the question, who was going to provide air cover for him? That path would come from Rabaul. Starting on August 22nd, Rabaul's airbase would provide air support, but by offensive means rather than defensive. In other words, they would neutralize Henderson Field, and thus Tanaka wouldn't have anything to worry about.
Just continue.
So, on the 22nd,
I gotta make sure this video is not an hour
it
long.
encountered bad weather and forced it to return. Not a great start to their grand scheme, but they would try again the next day. On the 23rd, Tanaka slowly inched south towards Guadalcanal. Rabaul's airstrike took off, but once again, bad weather forced them back. At this point, the commander of Rabaul suggested to Nagumo that maybe he should provide air support for Tanaka. Yamamoto quickly intervened and told him it was out of the question. He didn't want his carriers to reveal their presence prematurely by defending a convoy. He needed to keep them hidden and in reserve to attack the American carriers, which was the main target. However, the issue of Tanaka's protection remained unanswered, so Yamamoto decided on a compromise. If the morning of August 24th passed without the discovery of enemy carriers, then the Japanese would shift their focus and provide air cover for the convoy. Later that afternoon, Tanaka realized he was being shadowed by enemy aircraft, so he pulled back. A wise decision because it caused both air groups launched that day to miss him. Unknown to the Japanese, the odds were greatly shifting in their favor that evening. Due to misleading intelligence Fletcher was receiving, he decided to detach the Wasp, a third of his carrier strength, to refuel. Thus, Japanese air strength on the morning of the 24th would be superior to the Americans. 177 aircraft versus 153. But we will see that they will squander that advantage when they detached the Rujo to support Tanaka.
Oh, great.
And thus, the odds became equal.
The dog's barking. Lovely. Can't do a thing about it.
Alright, so now we arrive at the day of battle, August 24th. Much to Fletcher's surprise, Nagumo and his carriers were not 1,300 miles away, but instead only 450 miles north of him and closing. Rujo was detached that morning as Yamamoto's promise to provide air cover to the convoy. Rujo was scheduled to strike Guadalcanal in conjunction with Rabal's scheduled airstrike for that day. But guess what? That's right, yet again, bad weather prevented Rabal from launching an attack.
Ay, ay, ay.
Thus, Rujo's puny airstrike went ahead alone and struck Henderson, causing negligible damage. She would eventually be spotted by American search planes and get Fletcher's undesired attention centered on her throughout the afternoon. As we saw, the morning of the 24th was a chaotic one for Fletcher, as he only received fragments of the whole picture. Now we can see what was really occurring when he was presented with his dilemmas. The American morning search was only able to discover the convoy's covering force, Rujo, and elements of Kondo's advance force, but it failed at finding Tanaka and, more crucially, Nagumo. One PBY had gotten close though. It was this one, PBY 8B-37. It ran into Kirobutai's combat air patrol and was chased off before it had a chance to spot Nagumo's carriers. With that, Fletcher's opportunity of finding Nagumo that morning had disappeared. Rujo was that had been spotted and would receive Fletcher's wrath later.
That is a turn of bad luck.
Later on. If Fletcher felt disappointed at the performance of his morning air search and their failure to discover Nagumo's carriers, he would at least be comforted by the fact that the Japanese were equally having a hard time in finding him. Task Force 61 detected and destroyed 3 search planes that morning and afternoon. The first 2 were destroyed so quickly they weren't able to send out a report. Only the 3rd scout succeeded, and partially at that. All he was able to send out before being destroyed was the following. Spotted large enemy force being pursued by enemy fighters, 1,400. And that was it. No further information followed. But it was enough for Nagumo's air officer. Given the known course and speed of the aircraft, the officer was able to accurately estimate where it had been intercepted. And bingo, this was where the American carriers were estimated to be. And surprisingly, it was very accurate, only 10 miles off Fletcher's actual location.
10 miles off? Yeah, you can't get any more accurate than that.
Nagumo had already painfully learned the #1 rule in carrier warfare: strike first. So, trusting the accuracy of his staff, he boldly ordered his airstrike at his.
Another hard lesson learned. He learned now. He learns learn to trust his fucking stuff.
Airstrikes on the Americans. The first 2 would be composed of only dive bombers with escorting fighters. These 2 waves would soften up the target. The last strike would be of the much feared carrier killer torpedo bombers, who would finish off the crippled targets. One of the harsh lessons learned from Midway was that the torpedo bombers would suffer heavy losses in airstrikes. It was hoped that by launching them at the end, it would reduce losses as they would face less resistance from damaged carriers. So,
of course, I think at this point in time, American ships started receiving the. I think they started receiving the 40mm Bofors to replace their 1.1-inch Chicago piano guns, especially the carriers at this point in time. I think. I could be wrong. I think Enterprise won't receive that until after this battle. But I think most of her escorts would have had the 40mm Bofors by now.
Oh, the first strike of 27 bows and 15 zeros took off at 1500. At this point, Nagumo was winning the battle. He had found the enemy first and had launched first. And better yet, the Americans had committed their main strike at the Rujo, which splendidly, although not intentionally, had become bait for Fletcher. Just when Nagumo was feeling content with how things were going, his optimism was shattered at 15:15 with the words, "Hell divers." Shokaku's lookouts had spotted dive bombers descending on his flagship. Oh no, flashbacks of Midway were surely running through Nagumo's mind. But fortunately for him, he was not being attacked by a major airstrike, but instead just by 2 dive bombers. What happened was that 2 scout planes from Enterprise's afternoon search had finally discovered Kido Butai. They decided they would conduct a sneak attack on the carrier. Although they were detected by Shokaku's radar, the inexperienced technicians weren't able to warn the bridge in time. No fighters intercepted the pair, and Nagumo only realized he was about to be attacked when they were already diving on him. Thankfully for him, the Shokaku quickly turned to starboard, and only 2 near misses were scored. Panic ensued, fighters were scrambled, but all these actions proved unnecessary, as the worst had already passed. The 2 SBDs left the scene after their bombing run and carefully sent out their report with a position and a course. But, in an all too common occurrence, the bad atmospheric conditions in the South Pacific garbled their message. So much so that only a fraction was received by Fletcher. Thus, as we can see, because of this remarkable communication failure, Fletcher was denied the opportunity to strike at Nagumo's carriers with his reserve strike.
Hot.
Instead, he had to waste it on
Very
Mojo,
hot.
a ship that was already destroyed. Nagumo breathed a sigh of relief as he had just narrowly avoided a disaster. Consequently, he quickly ordered the second wave to launch. So now we have 2 airstrikes heading towards the Americans, and as we saw, the first struck Fletcher and heavily damaged the Enterprise. But the second airstrike never arrived. So now, the all-important question: what happened with the second strike?
Yeah, what did happen to that?
Well, right before they took off, a 4th Japanese scout plane had reacquired contact with Task Force 61. This scout gave Nagumo the first concrete report of enemy carriers, but unfortunately, it mistakenly placed them about 50 miles further south of their actual position. Given these new coordinates, Takahashi headed southeast with the expectation of finding the enemy carriers at 1800 hours. Now, a chain of tragic events occurred from the Japanese perspective. As we saw, communication failures were a recurring theme in this battle, and it did not only occur to the Americans, but to the Japanese as well. As Takahashi headed southeast, yet another search plane discovered Fletcher, and this time accurately reported its position. Nagumo rebroadcasted these new coordinates, which would tell Takahashi that the carriers were actually to the east of him. Furthermore, at 1730, Lieutenant Commander Seki gives his post-strike report, with again an accurate location, which is also rebroadcasted later by the Shokaku. As incredible as it may sound, Takahashi never received any of these messages, he continued on with his original inaccurate coordinates and ended up 83 miles south of Fletcher. To add insult to injury, members of his air group actually received these messages, but wrongly assumed their commander had as well. No one took the initiative to check if their commander was receiving the messages or not.
Oh, wow.
Takahashi then decided to head west and search there. But it was all in vain as he discovered nothing. He eventually had to call the strike off and head back home. To top off this failure, the air group ended up losing 5 dive bombers operationally. With the failure to find the carriers again, and with darkness settling in, Nagumo declined sending the deadly reserve strike of torpedo bombers. But they probably wouldn't have been necessary, for if Takahashi had found the Americans, he would have arrived when the Enterprise was hopelessly stuck going in circles. It's very likely she would have been finished. The failure of Takahashi to...
And that's why, ladies and gentlemen, the Enterprise still remains to this day known as the Lucky E.
find the American carriers and finish off the Enterprise would be the most critical failure of the Japanese in this battle.
And of the entire war. After all, I cannot wait for a fellow electrician to make a video to explain about Enterprise. Eddie Markey finished doing a Zero Lane Enterprise. 4 frickin' parts, all of them an hour long. Holy, and the ending of part 4 was, oh my god, it was heart-wrenching. It was gruesome, but it was also gave me goosebumps. You guys should watch that guy. Anyways, moving on.
Although Takahashi had failed in his task, other motions were at play to destroy the American flat tops. The advance force and a detached vanguard force had surged forward as soon as Task Force 61's presence had been revealed. At 1900 hours, Nagumo was wrongly told by Seki and survivors of the first airstrike that they had hit and damaged not 1, but 2 carriers. It was hoped that Kondo could catch and finish off any crippled enemy ships that remained. Yet, as darkness fell, so did their hope for a surface engagement. Kondo continued south, but found no enemy carriers. At 23:30, he gave up and called off the pursuit. It was evident the Americans had retreated. They were only half right in their conclusions. The Americans had indeed fled, but not as heavily damaged as believed. Only Enterprise had been seriously hurt. Regardless, their belief was that American carrier air power had been eliminated. Only one more obstacle remained to be overcome: Henderson Field. But here, some erroneous information is going to lead them to making a terrible decision.
Oh?
Yamamoto is informed about Rujo's destruction, and as depressing as that was, he is comforted by the belief that its airstrike on Guadalcanal had reportedly been successful. The air contingent on the island had been largely destroyed.
No.
Thus, her death was not in vain. Well then, based on this, to Admiral Nagumo and Yamamoto, it seemed that the battle had been a resounding tactical victory. American carriers had either been heavily damaged or sunk and had fled the scene, and Henderson was basically an empty airfield. With all enemy air power neutralized, the battle was as good as won. There was no need for them to stay any longer. Nagumo withdrew north to refuel and...
Assumptions, ladies and gentlemen. Assumptions are the death of commanders. Because if you assume that your enemy is destroyed, if you assume that they're competent, if you assume that you've won, you're going to lose horribly.
Kondo followed. Tanaka was told to carry on with his mission alone. He had nothing to worry about. Obviously, this assessment was based upon so much wishful thinking on behalf of the Japanese commanders. Contrary to the reports, Henderson Field was alive and well. What is incredible here is how far they've made it and yet decide not to follow through. Regardless of Yamamoto's unwillingness at having his carriers protect the convoy, it was still part of the mission. At this juncture, success of this entire operation was at stake, and they didn't even deem it necessary or even prudent enough to stick around and provide air support for the vulnerable transport.
Oh, yeah? Oh, dear God. And I wonder why Nagimo was still an admiral by the end of the war. I think he actually killed himself by the end of it.
You know, just in case Henderson had survived Ryujo's devastating strike of 6 Cape bombers. Regrettably for Tanaka, no air support was given to him. And the foolishness of that decision was shown the next day when the convoy was forced back by just a mere 8 planes. Operation KA had failed. The Battle of Eastern Solomons was undoubtedly an American victory, but things could have easily gone the other way.
Oh, yeah.
With that said, there were mistakes committed on both sides that could be learned from. Let's take a final look at them. For the Americans, a big letdown was their radio intelligence. There were no major breakthroughs like before at Coral Sea or Midway. This time it was too vague, and it failed to detect the Japanese carriers accurately.
Yeah.
Analysts at Hypo Station acknowledged this was in part due to Japanese efforts at improving their security. They said, success of a large task force, including carriers, in reaching the Solomons without detection by radio intelligence indicates that radio security practices of the Japanese are effective insofar as concealing actual movements is concerned.
Again,
The
opposite.
takeaway here is that for the first time since the start of the war, intelligence had failed to accurately detect Japanese carrier movements. And I'll let you guys know now, it's not going to be the last time.
Ooh. Ooh. Yikes. Yeah, the Santa Cruz. The Battle of Santa Cruz. Oh. Oh boy, was that a fucking battle. Oh, dear Lord. That was a Hi, headphones. You should go back in my head. Oh, whatever. That was a massive bit of letdown. Anyways, continue. Dear Lord, I'm almost at 50 minutes.
During
Oh,
the battle,
crap.
the other major shortcoming was clearly
How much longer?
communications. Bad atmospheric conditions,
Okay, I'm
human
almost done.
error, and malfunctioning radios led to a confusing, incomplete picture of the actual tactical situation. And I hope I was able to illustrate just how uncertain and confusing a carrier battle could be, and how important aerial reconnaissance was.
Yeah, aerial reconnaissance was, in fact, it still is a massive part of any wartime operation to this day. Yes, we now got satellites that can look down at enemies, zoom all the way down, and we can see, a woman's breasts. Yes, I've seen Patriot games. Shut up. But,
Fletcher,
you still things called clouds, and that's why, like the United States, they have drones for reconnaissance. That's why drone warfare now is a thing. Drones have taken up the old World War II, no, not World War II, World War one style where the first airplanes were brought to the front lines. The first airplanes of war weren't fighters. They were freaking reconnaissance vehicles. The Germans and the British just simply waved as they flew by. They didn't shoot. All they had were cameras to take them pictures. That's what drones are for now. They reconnaissance, and they do have weapons so that they can fight back. As we saw, I see right here, aerial reconnaissance is still a thing. Anyways, moving on.
Fletcher had some misfortune in that his morning search narrowly missed
I'm trying to keep this video under an hour. Let's see if I succeed.
finding Nagumo. The afternoon search finally found him, but poor radio communications robbed him of the opportunity to strike. On the flip side, these communication blunders also bungled the Japanese in their attempt to finish off the Big E.
Oh,
These
yeah.
were universal challenges to both sides in the Pacific. Radar. The ability to destroy snoopers quickly was excellent. The first 2 snoopers were taken out before sending out any sighting reports. Only the last one was able to send a sighting report before it was destroyed, and barely at that. If it had been destroyed just a bit more quickly, Fletcher's position could have remained concealed to Nagumo throughout the battle.
That could be agreed upon, yeah. If the Jake was destroyed without it sending out any form of radio communication, there's a good chance that Fletcher would have been safe-ish. Though that'll become a massive what if, because just imagine, if you will, the Fletcher went west, and all of a sudden he runs into the surface fleet. That'll be an old shit moment there. So it's a variable.
However, when faced with air attack, fighter radar interception proved poor. But this was more due to pilot radio discipline and technological limitations. If the problems could be fixed, like adding different frequencies for fighters to use, it showed great potential. And regarding the air attacks on Task Force 61, it was noticed by many that including a heavy battleship in the carrier screen had paid handsome dividends. It had attracted 7 of the 27 dive bombers that had attacked, and had contributed massive amounts of anti-aircraft fire for the carriers.
Yeah, I remember watching Battle 360 of the, for the History Channel, about the Big E, Enterprise, that when the North Carolina opened up all its flak batteries, they did it so quickly, and it was so thunderous, and all the fire spread out, that the crewmen of the Enterprise thought that she took a hit. So imagine, if you will, one gigantic battleship. All its guns are firing, save for the 16-inchers. And all you see, roughly, I'm going to say, maybe 10, 15, 25 miles away, or the fuck, you know what I mean, like a couple, like maybe 10 miles away, so to speak, yeah, 5 to 10 miles away. And all you see is the barrels flash, muzzle flash of fire. And it's so continuous and it's so rapid that you don't even see the guns. You just see smoke and you see flames. And so you immediately, your brain goes, shit, they took a hit. North Carolina didn't take a hit, if I remember correctly. Holy.
Protection.
And which is why battleships during World War II were relegated basically sadly, to anti-air roles by this point in time of the war. In fact, the last time, it won't be till I think the Battle of Okinawa, or the last T with United States battleships versus a Japanese battle line will be performed. And I think the only time the Americans used battleships against surface combats for Guadalcanal would be, I think, the South Dakota and the Washington with the Admiral Lee in control. But that's not it here. Then let's continue. We're almost done.
For the Japanese, they performed well, and as of August 24th, they were actually on the verge of winning. But a poor contact report, followed by an unbelievable set of communication failures, prevented them from achieving victory. Because of this, the Americans got off lightly damaged compared to what they should have. More critically, the Japanese High Command can be faulted for taking their eyes off the ball too soon.
No, not the High Command. Just one guy in particular, Nagumo. Let's face it, Nagumo, he was severely incompetent at carrier warfare. Severely incompetent. He managed to win one, but the guy was so incompetent. Again, I was surprised he still managed to be an admiral by the end of this war. Or that Yamamoto didn't go, alright, you failed me for the last time. Commit seppuku right now. You failed. Take the honorable way out. Dump him in the sea. Because he was that incompetent. And again, like, let's face it, this because the Nagamo was the guy. I'm going to continue this after the video ends. Just to remind me.
They withdrew on the 24th, not because of timidity, but because of overconfidence. They optimistically believed their pilot's wild claims of disabling 2 carriers when they had only damaged 1. Made worse was their inexplicable belief that Ryujo's meager airstrike had somehow neutralized Henderson Field.
Yeah, and even that got me confused. Like, you would think Rebel would have called the commander and went, yeah, our strike didn't go through because of weather. And in fact, I think they did receive a call. I'm sorry, people, but a light carrier's attack craft, an entire squadron of those, ain't enough to destroy a fully functional airbase. It's not enough. This is not like Pearl Harbor, where you had the element of surprise. This time they had an actual combat patrol, and they know they're at war with you. They're going to find you. They're going to shoot you down. They're not going to wait for you to just stop dropping bombs, then go grab the guns. So, again, very stupid.
They took all reports as facts and provided no contingency plan in the event they were wrong.
To quote a Steven Seagal movie, yeah, wrote down boobs in the comments. The assumptions is the mother of all fuck-ups. They assumed.
They didn't even provide air cover for the helpless Tanaka.
And that's the other reason why this guy should have been executed on the spot. Escorting the convoy, even though, yeah, there's no more air cover, is still part of your mission parameters. Mr. Ifo Otis. What an ass.
Who begrudgingly carried on
52 minutes, okay.
Their mistake was learned the next day when their unescorted convoy was turned back by just 8 aircraft. In conclusion, the Battle of Eastern Solomons showed the Japanese the brutal reality of the ensuing campaign and the key advantage their opponents now had. Henderson Field was the Americans' trump card. As long as it was operational, the Japanese could not send slow-moving transports during the day. Reassessing the situation, many saw for the first time that the battle for Guadalcanal would be a prolonged affair, and not a short one as hoped. Even Yamamoto slowly began to realize that Henderson Field, not the U.S. carrier fleet, should be the priority target for the next operation. In the meantime, a new formula would have to be figured out to bring troops safely to the island. And this would lead to one of the most iconic characterizations of the campaign, the Tokyo Express. But that will be for another video.
Yeah, I can't wait. Oh, it's hot.
I was going to include a bonus clip, but I'm a little worried it might affect this video. So I'm going to put it as unlisted. It's just a quick 4-minute commentary on the striking combat footage that exists of the attack on the Enterprise during the battle.
Oh no. Oh no. Montemayor, why? Why? I literally have 4-minute clip. It's 15 minutes of recording.
You can click here to view it, or there'll be a link in the description.
Screw it. Let's watch the commentary of this as well. Let's just get this all out of the way. Okay, it's still underneath an hour.
Of the 4 carrier battles of 1942, I would say that the Battle of the Eastern Solomons has the most remarkable footage of a carrier attack. Photographs and footage exist of the other 3.
You might notice the footage up here, the thing here, because it's the only footage I was able to find of the, or picture I could find of the Eastern Solomons for the American side. It's gonna be a funny one for the Japanese side. I can tell you that right now.
But not like this one. There was actually a cameraman on board the USS Enterprise, Marion Riley, who was set up in the aft end of the ship's island. From his view, he was able to see all 3 bomb hits that landed on the Enterprise. The footage he captured shows the actual moment when 2 of the bombs detonated on the flight deck.
Ooh, this will be good.
For some context, let's do a quick recap. August 24th, the Japanese hurled 2 airstrikes towards Task Force 61.
Yep.
But only the first strike found the carriers.
Yep.
This strike is composed of 27 dive bombers, and the air group is able to make it past the outer combat air patrol without any losses. They are now over their targets, ready to attack.
Yep.
Split into 2 groups. The main effort would be for the Enterprise, with 18 going for her, while the remaining 9 went for the Saratoga.
What?
However, eventually these 9 will realize that the Saratoga is too far off, so they will divert for the Big E. In other words, practically the entire first airstrike ended up going for the unfortunate Enterprise. With the exception of 7 who targeted the battleship North Carolina, and a few more who had been destroyed before they even dropped their bombs, all pressed their attack on the Enterprise. Between 1644 and 1646, 3 hits were scored on the ship.
Yeah.
Alright, let's begin. The footage begins after the first bomb has already landed.
Ooh.
It landed here, right at the forward corner of the number 3 elevator. Now keep your eyes focused here, because in a few seconds, the second bomb is also going to land near this area.
Ooh.
Let's watch it again from a wider shot.
Oh, yeah.
This second hit killed the entire 38-man crew of the starboard aft 5-inch guns. Heavy fires start, and you can see smoke rising from the interior of the ship and escaping through the outline of the aft elevator.
Yeah.
They run across the flight deck to fight the flames, but the attack is still underway, so they head for cover. An interesting thing to note is that near misses are occurring off-screen, which you can't see, but you can see their effects. When water splashes across the deck, like you will see in a few moments, they are from near misses. Now focus on the center elevator, because the third bomb is going to land right there in front of the screen.
Oh!
Let's watch it again from a wider perspective.
I really hope that guy... This guy. I hope that guy survived. Holy.
One of the most famous images of the Pacific War is this one. It's the moment the third bomb hit the Enterprise. Contrary to belief, the cameraman, Marion Riley, survived. It's actually just a still frame from the footage we just saw.
Ah.
There was a photographer that died during this attack.
Oh.
But he was in the starboard aft gun gallery, and he died when that second bomb hit.
Oh.
There's another near miss, and by now, the attack is over. Speeding up the footage now, the camera pans to the left and you can see debris, probably remains of enemy aircraft that had crashed into the sea. The rest of the footage shows the crew of the ships taking fire control measures to put out the flames. They do a tremendous job, and within an hour, flight deck operations on the Enterprise resumed. The Big E will live to fight another day. So like I said, this is very striking footage of a carrier attack, and I just felt it would be interesting to put some commentary and context on it. Alright, that's all.
Alright. And that thing is over this over here. So, at 58 minutes in, let's talk about Nagamel for a second. Let's just get this off my chest. The guy was a complete and total fool so far what I know about him. This is the guy who led a crew to battalion across Pearl Harbor, decided not to send a third wave that was going to hit their damn fuel oil in Pearl Harbor, which would have made it much harder for America to actually provide any form of naval missions in the Pacific for a very good chunk of time. And there's a good chance that they could have discovered Enterprise on the way back. That's strike number 1. Strike 2, Midway. Actually, no, strike 2. Him going to, Madagascar, and he was looking for the British carriers, the British fleet, yada, yada, yada. I think he managed to find a British carrier, and I think the Vampire. I don't remember the carrier's name, so sorry, people. I'm going off for I remember of Eddie Markey's video about Akagi, which I've only watched 5 times, and it's always been last time I was seeing him was like, I think 4 months ago. And he got surprised by, I think, a group of Blenheim bombers. And as America said, those guys have balls as fucking tungsten because they snuck up and queued up a tie. And this guy went, oh, yeah, our bad. And he did nothing to change that way. I just paraphrasing here because I can't remember all the details. Then at midway, we saw what happened. Lack of aerial reconnaissance. Again, the whole, yes, we have aircraft, the HE bombs designed to take out an island fortress. Oh wait, there's carriers? Better switch to torpedoes. Even though HE bombs can still work. And look what that landed him. He lost 4 carriers. And now, the Battle of the Eastern Solomons. America's first offensive. And he had the opportunity. To strike. He had the opportunity to end that campaign for... Hi, Mouse. Stay up. Please stay up here, please. Thank you. You needed to do your job. He had an opportunity to do his job. He failed. And yes, although the factors we saw earlier, his imbecile mistake was thinking, oh, yes, I like carriers. Airstrike managed to destroy an airfield. We don't need to protect a convoy anymore. Idiot. They still have submarines in the area. They still have a surface fleet in the area. Yeah, the carriers may be gone, but you do not know that carrier task force is going to detach some ships to protect Guadalcanal from any naval invasion fleet that may happen. Not to mention any escorts that may just survive the first battle. That convoy, even without the Air Force, still needs some form of protection. And the destroyers weren't going to cut it. And the guy... And again, that was part of his mission orders too. Protect that convoy. In other words, if this was TF2, he did not push the cart. Or he didn't push the cart to the end stage. He pushed the cart to the third stage, then left. The guy was such an imbecile. The guy was such a moron. Again, I don't care if he was so successful in his career. There's only so much failure one guy can take for his commanders to go, okay, we need to replace him. And I'm pretty damn sure even Yamamoto was going, you idiot, when he got back to port. Anyways, this video's been going on for a little bit longer than I should have. I gotta learn to stop rambling. And I barely rambled in this video, I think. So anyways, this was finally the ending of Montemayor's video on the Battle of the Eastern Solomons from both the Japanese perspective and of course this lovely extra of combat battle footage. YouTube, this is all historical. Don't copyright strike me. And if you do, well, fuck you. I don't care. It's in the public fucking domain. And last I checked, no one died on the footage. So, I'm fully aware of what I am. So, what's next for me reacting to? Well, I know at some point Tex from Black Pants Legion is about to release the Hunchback video for Battletech. That is going to be a reaction coming soon. I won't react to his earlier stuff because for me, I can't act, so I can't react to something I've already watched. This is why I barely have many reaction videos on here. So I don't know what I'm gonna do. I will surprise you all. So this is DM Travel Typhoon. Thank you all so much for watching, and please, before you click off, please support Montemayor. Please, his link to his video, not the extra comic that's been unlisted, will be down in the description below. And if you like my content, please leave a like, comment, and share. Ring the bell notification, and above all else, have a good one. TTFN, Tata for now. Peace. Goodbye.